She fell face first into the snow, and her children screamed. Clara Mercer tried to push herself up, but her arms wouldn't obey. 4 days without food. 3 nights sleeping in barns and ditches. And now this, a blizzard rolling in like God's own fury, ready to finish what hunger had started. Her youngest daughter grabbed her coat, pulling, crying, begging. "Mama, get up. Please get up." Clara couldn't. She was done. Then boots crunched through the snow. A man's voice, rough and low. "I've got room for 4. This is their story. Stay with me until the end and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey takes us. "Mama!" Lily's scream cut through the howling wind. Clara felt her daughter's tiny hands pulling at her coat, but she couldn't move. The snow burned against her cheek like fire. "Mama, please, get up. I'm trying, baby." Clara's voice came out as a whisper. "I'm trying." "She's not moving." Tommy's voice cracked. "Sam, help me lift her." "I can't. She's too heavy." "She's not heavy. You're just weak." "I'm not weak. Both of you stop." Clara forced her eyes open. Her boys stood over her, their faces red from cold, their breath coming in white puffs. Tommy had positioned himself between her and the road, his thin body a shield against whatever threat might come. He was 9 years old, and he'd already learned that the world was full of threats. "Tommy." Clara reached for his hand. "Take your brother and sister. Walk back toward town." "No. That's not a request." "I don't care. We're not leaving you. You'll die out here with me. Then we die together." Clara wanted to argue, wanted to scream at him that she was his mother, that he needed to obey her, that his life mattered more than hers. But she had no strength left for screaming. She had no strength left for anything. "Mama." Lily pressed her face against Clara's shoulder. "I'm scared." "I know, sweetheart. I want to go home." "We don't have a home," Clara thought. "We haven't had a home for 6 weeks." But she didn't say it. Some truths were too heavy for a 4-year-old to carry. "Someone's coming." Sam pointed toward the road. "Look, a wagon." Clara's heart seized. Someone could mean salvation. Someone could also mean danger. In the past 6 weeks, she'd learned that strangers were rarely kind. The banker in San Antonio had thrown them out of their lodgings when her money ran out. The shopkeeper in Austin had called her a beggar and threatened to summon the sheriff. The men on the train had looked at her with eyes that made her skin crawl. But she was dying. Her children were freezing. And whoever was in that wagon couldn't be worse than the blizzard bearing down on them. Could they? The wagon stopped. Clara heard boots hit the ground, heard footsteps crunching through the snow. She tried to lift her head, but the world spun and tilted. "Don't touch her!" Tommy's voice was sharp with fear. Clara felt him move in front of her, heard the desperation in his words. "Get away from us." "Easy, son." The stranger's voice was low, steady. "I'm not going to hurt anyone." That's what they all say. That's what everyone says right before... Before what? Tommy didn't answer. Clara knew why. Before they try to take Mama away. Before they offer her money for things she shouldn't have to sell. Before they tell us children are a burden and leave us by the side of the road. "I'm not going to hurt your mother." The stranger's voice came closer. "I'm going to help her. And then I'm going to take all of you somewhere warm. Understand?" "Why would you do that?" "Because you need help and I'm here. That's reason enough." Clara felt hands on her shoulders. Strong hands, but gentle. She forced her eyes open and found herself looking at a man's face. Dark hair, gray eyes, a jaw rough with stubble. He wasn't handsome, not exactly. But there was something in his expression that made her believe him. "Can you stand?" he asked. "No." "Then I'm going to carry you. Is that all right?" She should say no. She should fight. She should protect herself the way she'd learned to protect herself over the past 6 weeks. But her body had surrendered. even if her mind hadn't. Yes. He lifted her like she weighed nothing. Clara felt the world tilt again, felt her head fall against his shoulder. He smelled like leather and wood smoke, and something else, something warm and alive that she'd almost forgotten existed. "Tommy," the stranger called over his shoulder, "can you help your brother and sister into the wagon? I don't know you, I don't trust you. You don't have to trust me. You just have to get in the wagon before this storm kills all of us. Can you do that?" A pause, then, yes. Clara felt herself being laid in the back of the wagon, felt blankets being tucked around her. The stranger's face appeared above her. "What's your name?" she whispered. "Jackson Thornton. People call me Jack." "Clara Mercer." "Mrs. Mercer." He tipped his hat slightly. "My ranch is about 8 miles from here. We'll be there in an hour if the storm holds off. Can you stay awake that long?" "I don't know. Try. For your children." He disappeared, and Clara heard him climbing onto the driver's seat. The wagon lurched forward, and Lily crawled close to her, pressing her small body against Clara's side. "Mama, I'm here, baby. Is the man nice?" Clara looked up at the gray sky, at the snow beginning to fall faster now. She thought about all the men who'd seemed nice at first. Her father, who'd gambled away their fortune and then shot himself in his study. Her husband, Walter, who'd been kind enough until she realized kindness and love were two different things. The banker, the shopkeeper, the men on the train. "I don't know," she said honestly. "But he's all we've got." 10. Jack drove faster than he should have. The road was icy treacherous, and the horses were already tired from the trip to town. But the woman in the back of his wagon was dying. He could see it in the grayness of her skin, hear it in the shallow rattle of her breathing. "Mr." The middle boy. Sam, he'd heard the older one call him, climbed up onto the seat beside Jack. "Are you a cowboy?" "I'm a rancher." "What's the difference?" "Cowboys work for other people. Ranchers work for themselves." "Oh." Sam considered this. "Do you have a gun?" "Yes." "Have you ever shot anyone?" "Sam." The older boy's voice was sharp. "Stop bothering him." "I'm not bothering. I'm asking questions." "It's fine." Jack kept his eyes on the road. "Yes, I've shot people, in the war and after. I don't like talking about it." "Why not?" "Because killing isn't something to brag about, even when it's necessary." Sam was quiet for a moment. Then, "My papa died." Jack's hands tightened on the reins. "I'm sorry." "I'm not. He wasn't very nice." "Sam." This time it was Clara's voice, weak but commanding. "That's enough." "But it's true, Mama. He was always working, and he never played with us, and he didn't even cry when grandmother died, and—" "Samuel Walter Mercer, that is enough." The boy fell silent, but Jack felt his eyes still watching, still measuring. This child talked too much when he was nervous. Jack recognized the habit. He'd been the same way as a boy, filling silence with words, because silence gave him too much room to be afraid. "How much farther?" Tommy had climbed up on Jack's other side, his body tense with vigilance. 6 miles, maybe a little less." "And then what?" "Then you get warm, you get fed, you sleep in real beds. And in the morning we figure out what comes next." "What do you mean, what comes next?" Jack glanced at the boy. Those eyes too old for his face. That jaw set in a permanent line of suspicion. This child had been hurt, badly, and he wasn't going to trust anyone easily. "I mean, your mother needs rest and food before she can make any decisions. So do you. One step at a time. That's how survival works." "You talk like you know about survival." "I know enough." The blizzard hit when they were still 4 miles out. One moment the snow was falling steadily. The next it was coming at them sideways, driven by winds that cut through clothing like knives. "Everyone get down," Jack shouted. Hold on to each other. He couldn't see the road anymore, couldn't see anything but white. The horses slowed, fighting against the wind, and Jack had to rely on instinct alone. Mister, Sam's voice was high with fear. Are we going to die? No. How do you know? Because I didn't survive 4 years alone just to die in a blizzard with strangers in my wagon. Now get down and hold on to your sister. Sam obeyed. Jack leaned forward, squinting through the snow, searching for any familiar landmark. He'd traveled this road 1,000 times. He knew every tree, every rock, every bend. But the storm had turned everything into a featureless white blur. Then he saw it. A dark shape to the right, the old lightning-struck oak that marked the edge of his property. Another mile. Just one more mile. Ha! Jack snapped the reins. Come on, you stubborn nags, move. The horses surged forward, and Jack pushed them harder than he'd ever pushed them before. The wagon rattled and swayed, threatening to tip on the icy road. Behind him he heard Lily crying, heard Tommy telling her to hold on, heard Clara's voice rising above the wind. Jack, Jack, I can see a light. He looked. There, through the swirling snow, a faint yellow glow. The lamp he'd left burning in the window, the way his mother used to do. A beacon in the darkness. That's home, Jack shouted. We're almost there. The last half-mile took forever. The horses were staggering now, their strength nearly gone. But they made it. The barn materialized out of the storm like a ghost, and Jack pulled the wagon under its overhang, just as the wind reached a howling crescendo. He leaped down and ran to the back of the wagon. Clara was unconscious again, her children huddled around her like puppies around a dying mother. Tommy, I need you to take Sam and Lily inside. The door's unlocked. There's a fireplace in the main room, wood, and matches on the mantel. Can you start a fire? I've never... You can figure it out. You're smart. I saw that the moment I looked at you. Something flickered in Tommy's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or pride. Yes, sir. Go, now. The children ran through the snow toward the house. Jack gathered Clara in his arms and followed, fighting the wind with every step. She was so light, so still. Her pulse, when he checked it, was barely there. Not her, not today, not after everything. He didn't know where the thought came from. He didn't have time to examine it. He just kicked open the door and carried her inside. Tommy had gotten the fire going. Small flames were already licking at the kindling, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Sam and Lily sat on the floor, their wet coats still on their faces, turned toward the growing warmth. Good job. Jack laid Clara on the sofa near the fire. Now I need blankets. Upstairs, first room on the right. There's a chest at the foot of the bed. Bring everything. Tommy ran. Sam stayed, his eyes fixed on his mother. Is she dead? No. She looks dead. She's not. Jack was already pulling off Clara's wet coat, her sodden gloves. Her fingers were ice cold, her lips tinged with blue. She's just very sick from the cold. We need to warm her up. How? Blankets, heat, time. What if that doesn't work? Jack looked at the boy, at his pale face and his shaking hands, and the terror he was trying so hard to hide. Then we'll try something else. But it's going to work, I promise. You can't promise that. Nobody can promise that. I just did. Tommy returned with an armful of blankets. Together they wrapped Clara in layer after layer, piling the wool and cotton until she was cocooned in warmth. Jack built the fire higher, adding log after log until the room was almost too hot. Then he sat back and waited. Mr. Lily's small voice broke the silence. I'm hungry. Jack realized he hadn't eaten since morning. The children had probably gone much longer than that. I'll make food. Tommy, stay with your mother. Don't let the fire die down. Yes, sir. Jack went to the kitchen. His hands were shaking from cold or exhaustion or something else he didn't know. He heated the stew he'd made 2 days ago, added more water to stretch it, and ladled it into bowls. When he returned, Clara's eyes were open. "The children." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Where are my children?" "Right here, Mama." Tommy grabbed her hand. "We're all here. We're all okay." Clara's eyes moved around the room, taking in the fire, the blankets, the unfamiliar walls. Then her gaze found Jack. "You. Me. You didn't have to stop." "No, I didn't." "Why did you—" Jack handed bowls of stew to the children. Sam and Lily fell on the food like they were starving. Because they were. Jack realized. They were starving. "Because I've been where you are," he said finally. "Alone. Desperate. Sure that the world had given up on me. Someone helped me once when I didn't deserve it. I'm just passing that forward." Clara held his gaze. Her eyes, he noticed now, were the color of honey. Even exhausted, even half-frozen, they burned with an intelligence and a fierceness that took his breath away. "I don't accept charity." "Good. Because I'm not offering any." "Then what are you offering?" "A warm place to stay until the storm passes. Food, safety. After that, we figure things out." "What's your price?" Jack felt his jaw tighten. "I don't have a price. Everyone has a price." "Lady, I've lived alone for 4 years because I got tired of people and their prices. If I wanted something from you, I would have taken it by now. I haven't. That should tell you something." Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then so softly he almost didn't hear it. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be careful. That's smart." Jack stood up. "But right now the only thing you need to worry about is getting warm and getting fed. Everything else can wait until morning." He turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. "Mr. Thornton?" "Jack?" "Jack." She said his name carefully, like she was testing it. "Thank you. I don't trust you yet, but thank you." He nodded once and went to check on the horses. The storm raged outside, but inside his house was warm for the first time in years. Warm with the sound of children eating, with the crackle of a fire built for more than one person, with the presence of 4 strangers who had nowhere else to go. Jack stood in the barn, rubbing down his exhausted horses, and tried to figure out what he'd done. He'd invited chaos into his carefully ordered life. He'd taken responsibility for 4 people he didn't know. He'd cracked open a door he'd sealed shut 4 years ago, the day he'd buried his sister, and sworn never to let anyone close again. Sarah would have laughed at him. She'd always said he wasn't as hard as he pretended to be. That somewhere inside that fortress of silence and isolation, there was still the boy who'd cried when their mother died, who'd held her hand through the fever nights, who'd promised to take care of her always. He'd broken that promise. Sarah was dead because he hadn't been there when she needed him. But these children, Clara's children, they were alive. They were alive because he'd stopped. Because he'd listened to that voice inside him that wasn't quite dead yet. Maybe that was worth something. Maybe. He finished with the horses and walked back to the house through the howling wind. Through the window he could see them. Tommy sitting beside his mother, still on guard. Sam stretched out on the floor, already half asleep. Lily curled against Clara's side, her thumb in her mouth. And Clara, watching the door, waiting for him to return. Their eyes met through the glass, and something passed between them. Jack didn't have a word for it. Recognition, maybe, or the beginning of trust. He pushed open the door and stepped inside. "Storm's getting worse," he said. "We're going to be stuck here for a few days at least." Clara nodded. "Then I suppose we should discuss terms." "Terms." "For staying here. I won't take charity, Mr. Thornton. I work. I earn my keep. So do my children." Jack almost smiled. Almost. "All right, Mrs. Mercer. We'll discuss terms, but not tonight. Tonight you're going to rest. Tomorrow's soon enough for negotiations." "I don't. That's my first term." Jack hung his coat by the door. "Tonight you rest. No arguments, no negotiations, just rest." Clara opened her mouth to protest, then closed it again. For the first time since he'd found her in the snow, she looked almost amused. "You're a stubborn man, Mr. Thornton." "Jack. Jack." She paused. "Fine. Tonight I rest. But tomorrow we talk." "Tomorrow we talk." He showed her and the children to the upstairs bedrooms. 4 rooms he'd never furnished, never used, never imagined filling with anyone but ghosts. Clara took the largest one, settling her children around her, like a mother hen protecting her chicks. Jack stood in the doorway, suddenly awkward. He didn't know how to do this. Didn't know how to have people in his house, in his life, in his carefully constructed solitude. "Mr. Thornton." Lily's small voice drifted from the bed. "Jack." He looked at her her round face and her blonde curls and her enormous blue eyes. "Yes? Are you going to be our new papa?" Jack's chest tightened. He heard Clara's sharp intake of breath, heard Tommy's muttered protest. But Lily just watched him waiting. Patient. Trusting in a way that only children could trust. "No, sweetheart." Jack kept his voice gentle. "I'm not your papa. But while you're here, I'll take care of you. Is that okay?" Lily considered this seriously. Then she nodded. "Okay, but I'm going to pretend you are anyway. In my head. Is that allowed?" Jack's throat closed up. He thought of Sarah, of the children she'd never had, of the family he'd thought he'd never want again. "That's allowed." "Good." Lily smiled, the first smile he'd seen from her. "Good night, Mr. Papa." She closed her eyes, and within moments she was asleep. Jack looked at Clara. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. Something between gratitude and wariness, and something else. Something that made his heart beat faster. "She's never done that before," Clara said quietly. "Trusted a stranger so quickly. Maybe she sees something you don't." Maybe. Clara's eyes didn't leave his face. Or maybe she's just too young to know better. Jack nodded once. "Good night, Mrs. Mercer." Clara. Clara. The name felt strange in his mouth, intimate, dangerous. He turned and walked away before he could say something stupid, before he could ask why she'd been sleeping in ditches, why her children were starving, why she flinched when he moved too fast. Those questions could wait until tomorrow. Tonight he had 4 people sleeping under his roof for the first time in 4 years. 4 lives he'd somehow become responsible for. 4 reasons to wake up in the morning and keep going. He stopped at the window on the landing. The blizzard still raged, but through the swirling snow he saw something. A light moving along the distant road. A lantern maybe, or a torch. Someone else was out in this storm. Someone who might be looking for the same people Jack had just brought into his home. He watched until the light disappeared into the white chaos. Then he went to his room and laid his rifle beside the bed, just in case. Sleep didn't come for a long time. Jack lay in the darkness, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a house no longer empty. Footsteps creaking above him. A child's cough. The soft murmur of Clara's voice soothing someone through a nightmare. He'd said he had room for 4. He'd meant for 1 night, maybe 2. But lying there in the dark, listening to the sounds of a family that wasn't his, Jack had a feeling that everything was about to change. And he wasn't sure if that terrified him or saved him. Maybe both. The clock on the mantel struck midnight. Somewhere above him, a child laughed in her sleep. And Jackson Thornton, who had been alone for 4 years and intended to stay that way forever, closed his eyes and dreamed of something he'd forgotten how to want. A home that wasn't empty. A heart that wasn't broken. A second chance he didn't deserve. The storm raged for 3 days. Clara woke on the second morning to the sound of children's laughter drifting up from downstairs. Real laughter, not the forced kind that Tommy sometimes produced to make his siblings feel better. This was genuine Sam's high-pitched giggle, and Lily's delighted squeal mixing together in a way Clara hadn't heard in months. She pushed herself up slowly, testing her body. The fever had broken sometime in the night, leaving her weak but clear-headed. Her muscles ached. Her throat burned. But she was alive and her children were laughing, and that was more than she'd dared hope for 2 days ago. She found her shoes beside the bed, cleaned and dried. She noticed, though, she didn't remember taking them off, and made her way downstairs on unsteady legs. The scene in the kitchen stopped her cold. Jack stood at the stove, a towel tucked into his belt, like an apron flipping something in a pan. Sam sat at the table with flour on his nose and a wooden spoon in his hand. Lily perched on a stool beside Jack, watching him with the rapt attention she usually reserved for storybooks. And Tommy. Tommy was actually smiling as he set plates around the table. "You flip it too fast," Sam was saying. "That's why it landed on the floor last time." "That pancake was defective," Jack replied without turning around. "The batter was uneven." "The batter was fine. You just can't flip." "I've been flipping pancakes since before you were born, kid." "Then you should be better at it by now." Lily giggled. "Sam, you're being mean." "I'm being honest. There's a difference. Your mother's awake." Jack had spotted Clara in the doorway. He set down the pan and wiped his hands on the towel. "How are you feeling?" "Better." Clara's voice came out rougher than she'd intended. "How long was I asleep?" "About 30 hours, give or take. You needed it." 30 hours. Clara felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. "The children have been fed, bathed, and entertained. Tommy's been helping with chores. Sam's been helping me destroy breakfast. And Lily has appointed herself supervisor of all activities." "I'm very good at supervising," Lily said seriously. Clara didn't know what to say. She'd spent the past 6 weeks being the only adult, the only protector, the only one standing between her children and disaster. The idea that someone else had stepped in, had cared for them while she was unconscious, left her feeling grateful and terrified in equal measure. "You should sit down." Jack pulled out a chair. "You're pale as a ghost and you're swaying." "I'm fine." "You're stubborn is what you are. Sit." Clara sat. Partly because her legs were about to give out, and partly because there was something in Jack's voice that didn't invite argument. Tommy appeared at her side with a cup of coffee. "I made it myself. Jack showed me how." "Thank you, sweetheart." Clara took the cup, her hands trembling slightly. The coffee was too strong and slightly bitter, but she drank it anyway. Her son had made it for her. That made it perfect. "Mama, guess what?" Sam bounced in his seat. "Jack has horses, real horses, and he said when the storm stops he'll teach me to ride. And he has chickens too, and a cow named Bessie, and—" "Breathe, Sam." "And there's a barn with a loft, and you can see all the way to the mountains from up there and—" "Samuel." Clara held up a hand. "One thing at a time." "But there's so many things." Jack set a plate of pancakes in front of Clara. They were misshapen and slightly burned on one side, but the smell made her stomach growl so loudly that Lily laughed. "Eat," Jack said. "Then we'll talk." Clara wanted to argue, wanted to assert her independence, her capability, her refusal to be anyone's burden. But the pancakes were hot, and her children were safe, and for the first time in 6 weeks, someone else was in charge. She ate. The storm finally broke on the 3rd morning. Clara woke to silence the eerie, muffled quiet that came after heavy snowfall. She dressed quickly in clothes that had been washed and folded and left outside her door and made her way downstairs. Jack was already up, standing at the window with a cup of coffee in his hand. He turned when he heard her footsteps. "Roads won't be passable for at least a week," he said without preamble. "Snow's too deep for wagons, and the drifts will take time to settle." A week. Maybe more. Clara felt panic flutter in her chest. A week meant a week of depending on this stranger. A week of owing him. A week of being trapped with no way out if things went wrong. "I can see you calculating," Jack said quietly. Stop. I told you before I'm not going to hurt you or your children. I'm not going to ask for anything you don't want to give. You're safe here. You don't know me. Why would you? I don't need to know you. I know what it looks like when someone's running scared. I know what it looks like when children haven't eaten properly in weeks. And I know what it looks like when a woman's been carrying a weight too heavy for one person. Jack's eyes met hers. I've been alone for 4 years, Mrs. Mercer. I've got room and food and time. Let me help. I don't understand you. Most people don't. That's not an answer. No. Jack set down his coffee cup. It's not. But it's all I've got right now. The full story isn't pretty, and I don't think either of us is ready for that conversation yet. Clara studied him. The hard line of his jaw. The shadows under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept well either. The way his hands, rough and calloused from work, moved with unexpected gentleness. You said yesterday that someone helped you once, she said slowly, when you didn't deserve it. What did you mean? Jack was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was flat, controlled. I had a sister, Sarah. She was 8 years younger than me, the only family I had left after our parents died. I was supposed to protect her. What happened? She married a man I didn't trust. I told her not to. We fought about it. I said things I shouldn't have said, and she said things she didn't mean, and I left. Moved out here, built this ranch, told myself I was better off alone. Clara waited. She could feel the weight of what was coming. 2 years later, I got a letter from the sheriff in her town. Sarah was dead. Her husband had been beating her, and one night he went too far. Jack's voice didn't change, but his hands had curled into fists at his sides. I wasn't there. I wasn't there because I was too proud, too angry, too sure that I was right and she was wrong. And she died alone with no one to protect her. Jack. I rode to that town, found her husband, beat him until he couldn't stand. Would have killed him if the sheriff hadn't pulled me off. Jack finally looked at her, and Clara saw something in his eyes that she recognized. Guilt. The kind that never went away no matter how many years passed. The sheriff was a friend of my father's. He could have arrested me, should have arrested me. Instead, he let me go. Told me that killing that man wouldn't bring Sarah back, and that she wouldn't have wanted me to hang for her sake. So you came back here. I came back here, built walls, stopped letting anyone in. Told myself it was safer that way for me, and for anyone foolish enough to care about me. Jack's laugh was bitter. And then you fell in the snow, and your children screamed, and suddenly my walls didn't seem so important anymore. Clara didn't know what to say. She understood guilt. She understood the weight of choices that couldn't be unmade. She understood looking in the mirror and hating what you saw. My husband, she said quietly, was not a good man. Jack's eyes sharpened, but he didn't speak. He wasn't cruel, not the way your sister's husband was. He didn't hit me. He didn't need to. He had other ways of making me feel small. Clara wrapped her arms around herself. Walter was 45 when we married. I was 19. My father had just died, killed himself after losing everything to gambling debts, and my mother needed someone to take care of us. Walter offered. It seemed like salvation. But it wasn't. It was a transaction. I gave him children, kept his house, smiled at his business partners. He gave me security. There was no love in it, no warmth, just duty. Clara's voice hardened. When he died, I thought I was finally free. But his son from his first marriage, a man I'd helped raise, a man who'd called me mother for 10 years, threw us out within a week of the funeral. Said I'd never really been family. Said the children and I were on our own. His own siblings. Half-siblings. And Thomas isn't his blood at all. Thomas was Walter's son from his first wife who abandoned him as an infant. I raised that boy from the time he was 2 years old. I'm the only mother he's ever known. But to Walter's older son Thomas was just another mouth to feed, another competitor for the inheritance. Jack's jaw tightened. So you ran. I had an aunt in Texas. She died last year, but she'd left me a small inheritance. I thought maybe we could start over somewhere new, somewhere no one knew us." Clara laughed bitterly. "The money ran out faster than I expected. Every town we stopped in the story was the same. No work for a woman with 3 children. No room, no charity, no help. Until now." Until now. Clara met his eyes. "So you see, Mr. Thornton, we're both people who failed the ones we loved. We're both carrying guilt we can't put down. The only difference is that you built walls and I kept running." The silence stretched between them, heavy with shared understanding. "Jack," he said finally. "What?" "Call me Jack. We're past Mr. Thornton now." Clara almost smiled. "Jack, then. And you can call me Clara." "Clara." He said her name like he was testing the weight of it. "We should talk about what happens next." "I've been thinking about that." Clara straightened her shoulders. "I won't take charity. But I can work. I can cook, clean, mend, manage a household. If you need a housekeeper, I can be that. Room and board in exchange for labor. A business arrangement." "And the children." "The boys can help with chores. Thomas is responsible and Sam is eager to please. Lily is too young for real work, but she can help me with small tasks." Clara paused. "It would need to be understood that this is strictly professional. I'm not looking for a husband or a father for my children. I'm looking for a chance to get back on my feet." Jack nodded slowly. "Fair enough. I've got more work than one man can handle anyway. The ranch has been suffering since I stopped caring about anything but survival." "Then we have a deal." "We have a deal." Jack extended his hand. "Professional. Business. Nothing more." Clara took it. His grip was warm and firm, and she felt something flutter in her chest that she quickly suppressed. Nothing more, she told herself. Nothing more. The first week passed in a blur of activity. Clara threw herself into work with a ferocity that seemed to surprise even Jack. She scrubbed floors that hadn't been properly cleaned in years. She washed windows that were nearly opaque with grime. She organized the kitchen, inventoried the pantry, and created a schedule for meals that actually made sense. Jack watched her with a mixture of admiration and concern. "You don't have to do everything in one day," he said on the 4th morning, finding her already elbow-deep in laundry before sunrise. "I'm not doing everything. I'm doing what needs to be done." "You're going to collapse again." "I'm fine." "You're stubborn." "You've mentioned that." Jack leaned against the doorframe. "The boys are already dressed and asking when they can come outside. I thought I'd show them the barn, let them meet the horses properly." Clara's hands stilled in the washwater. "Is that safe?" "I'll be with them the whole time. Tommy's got a good head on his shoulders and Sam—" Jack paused. "Sam talks too much, but he listens when it matters. He likes you. The feeling's mutual. Kid's got spirit." Clara resumed her scrubbing. "Don't let them be a burden. They need to earn their keep too. They're children, Clara, not laborers. They're my children. That means they need to learn that nothing in this world is free." Jack was quiet for a moment. Then, "What happened to you? Not the facts you told me those, but what happened inside. What made you so afraid to accept help?" Clara's hands went still again. She didn't look at him. "When you spend your whole life depending on people who let you down," she said quietly, "you learn to stop depending. It's not fear, it's survival." There's a difference between self-reliance and isolation. Is there? Clara finally met his eyes. "You built walls for 4 years. You told me yourself that you stopped letting anyone in. How is what I'm doing any different?" "It's not." Jack's voice was soft. "That's why I recognize it, and that's why I'm telling you that it doesn't work. The walls don't protect you. They just make sure that when you finally break, there's no one there to catch you." Clara felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back furiously. She would not cry in front of this man. She would not show weakness. "Go take my sons to see the horses," she said. "I have work to do." Jack didn't move. "Clara?" Please." He nodded once and left. Clara listened to his footsteps fade, listened to the door open and close, listened to Sam's excited voice greeting him outside. Then she put her face in her wet hands and wept. She hadn't cried in months, hadn't allowed herself the luxury of tears. But something about Jack's words, about his understanding, about the gentle way he'd named the thing she'd been doing, it had cracked something open inside her. She cried for Walter, who had never loved her. She cried for her father, who had chosen death over responsibility. She cried for the woman she'd been at 19, so desperate for security that she'd traded her whole future for it. And she cried for her children, who deserved so much better than a mother who was barely holding on. When the tears finally stopped, Clara washed her face, straightened her dress, and went back to work. But something had shifted. Some wall inside her had developed a crack, and she wasn't sure if that terrified her or relieved her. Lily found her an hour later, climbing into her lap without asking permission. "Mama." "Yes, sweetheart." "I like it here." Clara stroked her daughter's hair. "Do you? Mr. Papa gave me a cookie, and he let me pet the horses, and he said I could name the baby chicks when they hatch in the spring." "Mr. Papa?" Lily nodded solemnly. "That's what I call him in my head. Remember, he said it was allowed." "Lily, honey, he's not your papa. He's just a man who's letting us stay here for a while." "I know. But he feels like a papa. He makes me feel safe." Lily looked up at her with those enormous blue eyes. "Doesn't he make you feel safe, Mama?" Clara thought about the question, about the way Jack had carried her through the storm, about the way he'd fed her children while she was unconscious, about the way he'd just stood in the doorway and seen through her defenses like they were made of glass. "Yes," she admitted quietly. "He does." "Then why are you sad?" "I'm not sad, baby." "You were crying. I heard you." Clara closed her eyes. Nothing escaped her youngest child. Lily saw everything, understood more than she should, and asked the questions that adults were too polite to voice. "Sometimes grown-ups cry when they're confused," Clara said carefully, "when they don't know what to feel or what to do." "Are you confused about Mr. Papa?" "I'm confused about a lot of things." Lily considered this. "Tommy says we shouldn't trust him. He says men always want something." "Tommy is very smart. It's good to be careful." "But Sam says Jack is nice. He says Jack taught him how to feed the chickens and didn't even get mad when Sam dropped the bucket." "Sam sees the good in everyone." "What do you see, Mama?" Clara looked out the window. Jack was in the yard, Tommy on one side and Sam on the other. He was showing them something, how to hold a tool maybe, or how to check a fence post. Tommy was listening with that serious expression he always wore. Sam was bouncing on his heels, asking questions that Clara couldn't hear but could easily imagine. What did she see? She saw a man who had been broken and had rebuilt himself in isolation. She saw a man who was awkward with kindness because he'd forgotten how to receive it. She saw a man who looked at her children like they mattered, like they were people instead of burdens. She saw a man who scared her not because he was dangerous, but because he made her want things she'd stopped believing in. "I see someone trying," Clara said finally, "just like us. Then maybe we should try together." Lily's logic was simple, childlike, devastating. "That's what families do, right? They try together." Clara pulled her daughter close and didn't answer, because the answer was yes. That was exactly what families did. And Clara wasn't ready to admit that she wanted one. That night, after the children were asleep, Jack found Clara on the porch. She was wrapped in a blanket, watching the stars emerge from the clearing sky. "Mind if I join you?" "It's your porch." "That's not what I asked." Clara shifted to make room, and Jack settled into the chair beside her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was different now, less awkward, more companionable. "Lily calls you Mr. Papa," Clara said finally. "I know. She told me." "Does that bother you?" Jack was quiet for a moment. It should. It should terrify me. I'm not fit to be anyone's father. I couldn't even protect my own sister. But when she looks at me with those big eyes and calls me that, I feel something I haven't felt in years. And Jack's voice was rough. I feel like maybe I'm not completely broken. Like maybe there's still some part of me worth saving. Clara understood. God, she understood. I've been thinking about what you said this morning, she said quietly. About walls, about isolation. And I think you're right. I've been so focused on protecting myself and my children that I forgot what we were protecting ourselves for. Clara pulled the blanket tighter. What's the point of surviving if you never actually live? That's a question I've been asking myself for 4 years. Have you found an answer? Not until 3 days ago. Jack turned to look at her. Not until a woman fell in the snow and her children screamed, and I suddenly remembered what it felt like to matter to someone. Clara felt her heart skip. Jack, I'm not saying anything you don't already know. I'm not asking for anything. He broke off frustrated. I've spent 4 years not talking to anyone. I'm not good at this. You're doing fine. I'm doing terribly, but I'm trying. Jack's eyes held hers. That's all I can promise, Clara. I'll try. Whatever this is, whatever it becomes, I'll try. Clara thought about her deal. Professional, business, nothing more. She thought about Lily's question. What do you see, Mama? She thought about the crack in her wall, the one that kept getting wider every time this man looked at her like she was worth something. We have an arrangement, she said carefully. A business arrangement. I know. I'm not looking for anything more. Neither am I. Good. Clara stood up. Then we understand each other. We understand each other. She walked to the door, then stopped. Without turning around, she said, Jack. Yes. Thank you. For trying. She went inside before he could respond. But as she climbed the stairs to her room, she could have sworn she heard him whisper something. It might have been, you too. Or it might have been the wind. Clara didn't let herself wonder which. 2 weeks passed, and the arrangement began to feel less like survival and more like something Clara didn't dare name. She woke each morning before Dawn started the coffee and had breakfast ready by the time Jack came in from his early chores. They ate together now, all 5 of them around the table, and Clara found herself looking forward to those meals more than she wanted to admit. The children had relaxed into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Tommy still watched Jack with cautious eyes, but his shoulders weren't quite so tense anymore. Sam had become Jack's shadow, following him everywhere, asking endless questions that Jack answered with surprising patience, and Lily had stopped asking if Jack was going to be her new papa. She'd simply decided he was, and treated him accordingly. It was the 3rd week of January when everything changed. Clara was in the kitchen kneading bread when she heard hoofbeats on the frozen road. Her hands went still. No one had come to the ranch since their arrival. Jack had mentioned that visitors were rare even in good weather, and the snow made travel nearly impossible. Jack appeared in the doorway, his expression tight. Stay inside. Who is it? I don't know, but I don't like surprises. He grabbed his rifle from beside the door and stepped onto the porch. Clara wiped her hands on her apron and moved to the window, her heart pounding. 2 riders approached. Men in heavy coats, their hats pulled low against the cold. They stopped about 20 yards from the house, and the larger one called out, Jackson Thornton. Who's asking? Name's Marcus Webb. I'm looking for a woman and 3 children. Been told they might have come this way. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. No. No, no, no. Not here. Not now. Don't know any woman with 3 children, Jack called back. You got the wrong place. That's so? The man's voice was casual, but there was something underneath it, something cold. Because the woman I'm looking for disappeared from San Antonio about 2 months ago. She's got red hair, honey-colored eyes, and 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. Ring any bells? Jack's stance shifted almost imperceptibly. Like I said, wrong place. Mind if we take a look around, just to be sure? Yeah, I do mind. The second rider spoke for the first time. Mr. Thornton, we don't want trouble. We're just doing a job. The woman's former stepson hired us to find her and the children. He's concerned about their welfare. Their welfare? Jack's voice was flat. That why he threw them out in the middle of winter with nothing but the clothes on their backs? Silence. The 2 men exchanged glances. So they are here, Webb said. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Webb's horse stepped closer. Look, Thornton, this doesn't have to be difficult. The stepson just wants to talk to her. Work things out. There's an inheritance-involved papers that need signing. Once that's done, she's free to go wherever she wants. And if she doesn't want to sign, that's not really your concern, is it? Clara watched Jack's shoulders tighten, watched his grip shift on the rifle. She should go out there, should face these men herself, should stop hiding behind a stranger's protection. But her feet wouldn't move. Here's what's going to happen, Jack said, his voice dropping to something low and dangerous. You're going to turn your horses around and ride back the way you came. You're going to tell whoever hired you that you didn't find what you were looking for. And you're never going to come back to my property again. Or what? Or I'm going to put a bullet in you, bury you in the north pasture, and let the coyotes sort out the rest. The silence stretched. Clara held her breath. You're making a mistake, Webb said finally. That woman isn't worth dying over. Maybe not, but my land is, and you're standing on it. Jack raised the rifle slightly. You've got about 10 seconds to leave before I decide this conversation is over. The men didn't move for a long moment. Then Webb laughed a short, ugly sound. All right, Thornton. Have it your way. But this isn't over. That woman owes debts, and debts get paid, one way or another. They turned their horses and rode away. Clara watched until they disappeared over the ridge, her whole body trembling. Jack came back inside. His face was hard, his eyes cold in a way she'd never seen before. Who was your husband's stepson? His voice was clipped. The one who threw you out. Harold Mercer. And he hired men to track you down. I didn't think he would. Clara's voice broke. Jack, I'm sorry, I should have told you. I should have warned you that someone might come looking. Yes, you should have. The words hit her like a slap. She flinched, and something in Jack's expression softened slightly. What does Harold want? He asked, his voice gentler now. Really? Walter's will. Clara sank into a chair, her legs suddenly unable to hold her. When Walter died, he left everything to Harold: the house, the business, the accounts. But there was a provision, a trust fund for the children's education to be administered by me until they come of age. Harold can't touch it, and it infuriates him. How much? $15,000. Jack let out a low whistle. That's a lot of money. It's everything Walter had left after the debts were paid. Harold got the house and the business, but the cash, the liquid assets, went into trust for the children. Clara's hands twisted in her lap. Harold wants me to sign over control. If I do, he can access the funds, use them however he wants. And you refused. Of course I refused. That money is my children's future. I won't let him steal it. So he threw you out. Figured you'd get desperate enough to sign eventually. Clara nodded miserably. I thought if I could just get far enough away, find somewhere to start over, he'd give up. But he didn't. He won't. She looked up at Jack, her eyes burning with unshed tears. I've put you in danger. You and your ranch and everything you've built. Those men will come back. They'll bring more men. They won't stop until they get what they want. Jack was quiet for a long moment. Then he knelt down in front of her chair, bringing himself to her eye level. "Clara, look at me." She looked. "I've been alone for 4 years because I was too afraid to let anyone matter to me again. Too afraid to risk losing someone the way I lost Sarah." Jack's voice was steady, but his eyes were fierce. "But you and your children walked into my life, and somewhere in the past 3 weeks, you started to matter. I don't know what that means yet. I don't know where it goes. But I know this: I'm not going to let anyone hurt you. Not Harold, not those men, not anyone. Jack, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to." He took her hands in his, and Clara felt the warmth of his rough palms, the strength in his fingers. "We're in this together now. Whatever comes, we face it together. That's what family does." Clara's breath caught. Family. Jack seemed to realize what he'd said. He released her hands and stood up abruptly, turning away. "I didn't mean that as... I wasn't suggesting... I know what you meant. It's just that the children they've become, and you've..." Jack ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "I'm not good at this." Despite everything, despite the fear and the danger and the uncertainty, Clara felt something warm unfurl in her chest. Something that felt dangerously like hope. "You're doing fine," she said softly. Jack turned back to look at her. The hardness had left his face, replaced by something vulnerable and uncertain. "Those men will be back," he said. "We need to be ready. What do we do? First we tell the children. Not everything. They don't need to know about the money or Harold, but they need to know that some men might come asking questions, and they need to know not to talk to strangers." Clara nodded. "Tommy will understand. He's been waiting for something like this." "I know. I've seen the way he watches the road." Jack's jaw tightened. "That boy carries too much weight for his age." "He's had to. There was no one else." "There is now." Jack met her eyes. "I meant what I said, Clara. I'm not going anywhere." The conversation with the children was harder than Clara had expected. Tommy took the news with grim acceptance. "I knew it," he said quietly. "I knew Harold wouldn't let us go that easily." "You knew about the trust fund?" Clara asked. "I heard you and Father arguing about it before he died." Tommy's face was carefully blank. "I heard a lot of things I wasn't supposed to hear." Clara's heart ached. How much had her son carried in silence? How many adult burdens had he shouldered without complaint? Sam predictably had questions. "Why does Harold want our money? Doesn't he have his own money? Why is he so mean? Can Jack shoot him if he comes here?" "No one is shooting anyone," Clara said firmly. "We're just going to be careful. If anyone comes to the ranch, you come find me or Jack immediately. Don't talk to strangers. Don't leave the house without telling us." "But I'm supposed to help Jack with the chickens." "You can still help. Just stay close to the house and keep your eyes open." Lily, surprisingly, was the calmest of all. "Mr. Papa won't let the bad men hurt us," she said with complete certainty. "He promised to take care of us. He promised." Clara looked at Jack, who stood in the doorway listening. His face was unreadable, but his hands had curled into fists at his sides. "That's right, Lily," he said quietly. "I promised." That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind rattle the windows. Every sound made her tense. Was that a horse? A footstep? Someone trying to get in? Finally, she gave up. She wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and crept downstairs, meaning to make tea and sit by the fire until exhaustion claimed her. Jack was already there. He sat in the chair by the window, his rifle across his knees, his eyes fixed on the darkness outside. He turned when he heard her footsteps. "Can't sleep either?" "No." Clara settled into the other chair. "I keep hearing things. The wind. This old house creaks in the cold. I know, but I can't stop listening." They sat in silence for a moment. The fire had burned low, casting dancing shadows across the walls. "I've been thinking," Jack said finally. About those men. About Harold. And I think we need to go on the offensive. Clara frowned. What do you mean? Right now, we're waiting for them to come to us. That gives them the advantage they can choose when, where, how. But if we take control of the situation, how? I'm not going to sign those papers, Jack. I don't care what they threaten. I'm not asking you to sign anything. Jack turned to face her. I'm asking you to marry me. Clara's breath stopped. For a moment she was certain she'd misheard him. What? If you're my wife, you have the full protection of my name and my property. Harold can't claim you owe him anything. He can't threaten you or the children without threatening me. And I promise you, Clara, people in these parts know better than to threaten Jackson Thornton. Jack, you don't even... Clara's thoughts tumbled over each other. This is insane. Probably. Jack's expression didn't change. But it's also practical. And right now, practical is what's going to keep you and your children safe. You'd marry me to keep us safe. A woman you've known for 3 weeks. I'd marry you because... Jack stopped. His jaw worked for a moment like he was fighting against words that wanted to come out. Because in 3 weeks, you and your children have made me feel more alive than I've felt in 4 years. Because I wake up every morning looking forward to seeing you at breakfast. Because when Lily calls me Mr. Papa, I want it to be true. Clara felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She didn't bother to wipe them away. Jack, that's not a reason to get married. That's a reason to what? Keep pretending we're just business partners. Keep sleeping in separate rooms and calling each other by our last names and acting like there's nothing between us. Jack leaned forward. I'm not good at pretending, Clara. And I don't think you are either. I was married for 10 years to a man who didn't love me. I swore I'd never do that again. I'm not Walter. I know you're not. But Jack, marriage is supposed to be about love. Not convenience. Not protection. Love. Jack was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. What if it's both? Clara stared at him. What? What if it's protection and convenience and... He broke off, frustrated. Clara, I don't know how to do this. I've spent 4 years not feeling anything, and now I feel everything, and I don't have the words for it. Try. Jack stood up abruptly and crossed to the window. His back was to her, his shoulders tense. When those men came today, he said slowly, when I heard them asking about you, I wanted to kill them. Not because they were threatening my land, because they were threatening you. Because the thought of anyone taking you away from here from me... He turned around. I'm not good at words, Clara, but I know what I feel. And I know that if you walk out that door tomorrow, I'll spend the rest of my life wishing I'd said something to make you stay. Clara rose from her chair. Her legs felt unsteady, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Jack, you don't have to answer now. You don't have to answer at all. I needed you to know. He laughed bitterly. God, I'm making a mess of this. Clara crossed the room until she was standing in front of him. Close enough to see the pulse jumping in his throat. Close enough to see the fear in his eyes. Fear that she would reject him, that he'd opened himself up only to be hurt again. She understood that fear. She felt it too. I'm terrified, she whispered. I know. I've been hurt so badly, Jack. I don't know if I can trust this. Trust you. Trust myself. I know. But... Clara's voice broke. But when I think about leaving, about taking my children and walking away from here from you, I can't breathe. I can't imagine waking up and not seeing you at breakfast. I can't imagine Lily not having a Mr. Papa to follow around. I can't imagine... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Jack's hand came up to cup her face. His palm was rough and warm against her cheek. Clara. Yes. I'm going to kiss you now. Is that all right? Clara answered by rising on her toes and pressing her lips to his. The kiss was soft at first, tentative. Two people who had forgotten how to be vulnerable remembering together. But then Jack's arms came around her, pulling her close, and Clara felt something inside her crack wide open. This was what she'd been missing. This warmth, this connection, this feeling of being held by someone who actually wanted to hold her. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Jack pressed his forehead against hers. Was that a yes? Clara laughed through her tears. That was a, let me think about it. Take all the time you need. Jack's arms tightened around her. I'm not going anywhere. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms while the fire burned low and the wind howled outside. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Clara felt something she'd stopped believing in. Safe. She felt safe. The next morning dawned gray and cold. Clara woke to the sound of hoofbeats, not the threatening approach of strangers, but the familiar rhythm of Jack returning from his early rounds. She dressed quickly and went downstairs to find the children already at the table. Tommy was helping Lily with her breakfast, while Sam chattered about something he'd seen in the barn the day before. And Jack said I could name him, so I'm going to call him Biscuit because he's the color of biscuits and... Who's the color of biscuits? Clara asked, settling into her chair. The new calf. He was born last night, and Jack let me watch, and it was disgusting but also amazing, and a calf was born last night. Mama, you're not listening. I just said that. Clara smiled despite herself. Sam's enthusiasm was infectious, and this morning after last night, everything seemed brighter. The door opened, and Jack stepped in, stomping snow from his boots. His eyes found Clara's immediately, and something passed between them. A warmth, a recognition, a shared secret. Morning, he said. Morning. Tommy looked between them, his eyes narrowing. Something's different. What do you mean? Clara reached for the coffee pot, not meeting her son's gaze. You're both smiling. Neither of you ever smiles before coffee. Maybe I'm just in a good mood. Mama, you're never in a good mood before coffee. Jack laughed, a real laugh, open and unguarded. The children stared at him in surprise. What? He said. I can laugh. You never laugh, Sam pointed out. You do that thing where you breathe out of your nose and sort of nod. That's not laughing. It's a different kind of laughing. It's a wrong kind of laughing. This was a real laugh. What happened? Jack's eyes met Clara's again. Maybe I'm just in a good mood too. Lily, who had been watching the exchange with her usual intensity, suddenly gasped. You're getting married. The table went silent. Clara felt her face flame. Lily, nothing's been decided. You are, I can tell. Lily bounced in her seat. Mr. Papa proposed and you said yes, and now you're going to be married and he's going to be our real papa, and we're going to live here forever. Lily, slow down. Is it true? Tommy's voice was sharp. Did he propose? Clara looked at Jack. He gave her a small nod. Yes, she said quietly. He did. And what did you say? I said I needed to think about it. What's there to think about? Sam demanded. Jack's the best. If you marry him, we get to stay here forever. If you don't, those men might come back and take us away. It's simple. Nothing about this is simple, Sam. It is to me. Clara looked at Tommy. His face was closed, unreadable. Tommy, what do you think? Her eldest son was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to Jack. Do you love her? Jack didn't hesitate. Yes. Do you love us, all of us? Yes. Will you protect her? Even if it's hard, even if those men come back, even if it costs you something? Yes. Tommy nodded slowly. Then I think you should marry him, Mama. I think... His voice cracked slightly. I think this is what Father never gave us. A real home. Someone who actually wants us here. Clara felt tears burning in her eyes. Her serious, cautious, protective son, the one who trusted no one, who carried the weight of the world on his young shoulders, was giving his blessing. Tommy, I'm not saying it because I want you to. I'm saying it because it's true. Tommy's jaw set in that familiar stubborn line. Jack's not perfect. He's grumpy and he doesn't talk enough and he makes terrible coffee. But he loves us. I can see it. And that's more than anyone else has ever given us. Clara reached across the table and took her son's hand. When did you get so wise? I had to. There was no one else. There is now, Jack said quietly. You don't have to carry everything alone anymore, Tommy. That's what fathers are for. Tommy looked at him for a long moment. Then so softly Clara almost missed it. Okay. That single word held more weight than any speech could have. So, Sam was practically vibrating with impatience. What's the answer? Are you marrying him or not? Clara looked at Jack. At the hope in his eyes, the fear, the vulnerability he was trying so hard to hide. She looked at her children. At Tommy's cautious approval, Sam's eager excitement, Lily's beaming certainty. She thought about everything she'd been through. The loveless marriage, the rejection, the months of running and hiding and barely surviving. And then she thought about the past 3 weeks, the warmth of this house, the laughter at the breakfast table, the feeling of Jack's arms around her last night holding her like she was something precious. Yes, she said. Sam cheered. Lily squealed. Tommy smiled a real genuine smile that made him look his age for the first time in years. And Jack crossed the room in 2 strides, pulled her out of her chair, and kissed her right there in front of the children. Gross, Sam said happily. Beautiful. Lily sighed. About time, Tommy muttered. And Clara, wrapped in the arms of a man who loved her, surrounded by children who finally had a real home, laughed until she cried. The wedding was set for Sunday. Reverend Price agreed to perform the ceremony at the ranch, given the circumstances. Jack had ridden into town the morning after Clara's acceptance, braving roads still treacherous with ice, and returned with the minister's promise and a simple gold band he'd bought from the general store. It's not much, he said, showing Clara the ring that evening. But it was my mother's size, and I thought, it's perfect. Clara took the ring and held it up to the lamplight. Simple, unadorned, honest, like the man who'd chosen it. We can get something finer later, when things settle down. I don't want something finer. I want this. Jack's face softened in a way that still surprised her. This man who'd spent 4 years building walls around his heart, he looked at her like she'd hung the moon. 3 more days, he said quietly. 3 more days. They stood close but not touching, still navigating the strange territory between their old arrangement and their new reality. The kiss they'd shared had changed everything and nothing. They were still Clara and Jack, still awkward and uncertain, still carrying wounds that hadn't fully healed. But they were also something more now, something that felt like possibility. The children threw themselves into wedding preparations with an enthusiasm that bordered on chaos. Lily insisted on picking wildflowers for Clara's hair, despite the fact that nothing was blooming in January. Sam appointed himself in charge of decorations and spent hours cutting snowflakes out of old newspaper. Tommy predictably focused on practical matters. He helped Jack move furniture in the parlor to make room for the ceremony and quizzed Reverend Price on the legal requirements for marriage in Texas. "You're sure it's binding?" Tommy asked the minister for the 3rd time. "Completely legal. No one can say it doesn't count." Reverend Price, a patient man in his 60s with kind eyes and a gentle manner, put a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Son, I've been marrying folks in this territory for 30 years. When I say the words and they sign the paper, it's as legal as anything can be. Why are you so concerned?" Tommy glanced at Clara, then away. "Just want to make sure no one can take us away." The minister's expression shifted to understanding. "Ah, well, let me put your mind at ease. Once your mother marries Mr. Thornton, you children become his legal responsibility. Anyone who wants to interfere with that will have to go through the courts, and courts in Texas tend to favor families staying together." What about men who come looking for us? Men who want to cause trouble? Those men would be interfering with a legal family unit. That's a serious offense. Reverend Price smiled. Plus, I've known Jack Thornton since he was a boy. Anyone fool enough to threaten his family will find themselves facing a man who doesn't take kindly to threats. Tommy nodded slowly. Some of the tension left his shoulders. Okay, good. Clara watched this exchange from across the room, her heart aching. Her son had been carrying this fear, the fear that their newfound happiness could be snatched away, and she hadn't even known. Later that night, she found Tommy sitting on the porch staring at the stars. "Can I join you?" He shrugged, which she took as permission. She settled into the chair beside him and waited. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "For what? For being suspicious. For not trusting Jack from the beginning. For—" his voice cracked. "For being so scared all the time." "Tommy, sweetheart, you have nothing to apologize for. I just keep waiting for something bad to happen. Every time things seem good, they fall apart. Father died and we lost everything. I thought maybe this time would be different, but then those men came and you're scared it's all going to disappear." Tommy nodded miserably. Clara reached over and took his hand. "I understand that fear. I feel it too. Every time I let myself believe this is real, a part of me whispers that it can't last. How do you deal with it?" "I'm learning, slowly." Clara squeezed his hand. "Jack told me something once. He said that building walls doesn't protect you from loss. It just makes sure you're alone when the loss comes. I think he's right. What if I can't let my walls down? What if I don't know how? Then we figure it out together. You don't have to do this alone anymore, Tommy. That's the whole point." Tommy was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I like him. Jack, I didn't want to, but I do. I know. He's good with Sam, patient. Sam needs that someone who doesn't get annoyed by all his questions. Jack seems to genuinely enjoy answering them. And Lily," Tommy's voice softened. "Lily needs a papa. A real one. Someone who makes her feel safe. What about you? What do you need?" Tommy looked at her with those two old eyes. "I need to stop being the man of the family. I need someone else to carry that weight for a while." He paused. "I think Jack can do that. I think he wants to. He does want to, very much." "Then I'm glad you're marrying him." Tommy's hand tightened around hers. "I'm glad we're staying." They sat together in comfortable silence until the cold drove them inside. Clara tucked her son into bed, something she hadn't done in months, something he'd insisted he was too old for, and pressed a kiss to his forehead. "I love you, Tommy." "I love you too, Mama." She was halfway out the door when his voice stopped her. "Mama?" "Yes." "Do you think—" He hesitated. "Do you think Father would be angry that you're marrying someone else?" Clara considered the question carefully. Walter Mercer had never been a passionate man. Their marriage had been comfortable but cold. He'd provided for her and the children, but he'd never loved them not the way Jack loved them, fiercely and without reservation. "I think your father would want us to be happy," she said finally, "and I think he'd be glad we found someone who genuinely cares about us." "I don't miss him." Tommy's voice was barely a whisper. "Is that wrong?" "No, sweetheart. It's not wrong. You can't miss what you never really had." She closed the door softly and leaned against it, tears sliding down her cheeks. Her poor boy carrying guilt about feelings he couldn't help. "Everything okay?" Jack was at the bottom of the stairs, looking up at her with concern. "Yes, just—" Clara wiped her eyes. "Just a conversation with Tommy. He's struggling." "I know, he hides it well, but I can see it." Jack climbed the stairs until he was standing in front of her. "He needs time. He needs consistency. He needs to learn that not everyone leaves. He likes you. He told me." "I like him too. He's a good kid." Jack paused. He reminds me of myself at that age, after my mother died, trying so hard to be strong, to hold everything together and crumbling inside. How did you get through it? I didn't. Not for a long time. Jack's hand came up to cup her face. Maybe if I'd had someone, a father, a mentor, anyone, things would have been different. Maybe I wouldn't have spent 4 years alone running from my own grief. You have someone now. So does Tommy. He just needs to learn to trust it. Clara leaned into his touch. 2 more days. 2 more days. Jack's thumb traced her cheekbone. Then you're stuck with me forever. I think I can live with that. He kissed her forehead and stepped back. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be busy. What's happening tomorrow? I'm teaching Sam to ride. He's been begging for weeks, and I figure it'll help burn off some of that energy. Clara laughed. Good luck with that. I'll need it. The next morning started with chaos. Sam had apparently been awake since before dawn, too excited about his riding lesson to sleep. By the time Clara came downstairs, he'd already spilled the milk, broken a bowl, and attempted to saddle a horse by himself. He tried to climb onto Bessie, Jack reported, steering the bouncing boy toward the table. Bessie's a cow. In my defense, Sam said, they look similar from behind. A cow and a horse look nothing alike. They both have 4 legs and tails. So do dogs. Were you planning to ride one of those next? We don't have any dogs. Sam's eyes lit up. Can we get a dog? Please, I promise I'll take care of it. I'll feed it and walk it and teach it tricks and— One thing at a time, Clara interrupted. First eat breakfast, then riding lesson, then we'll discuss dogs. Is that a maybe? It's a we'll see. That's a yes, Mama said yes to a dog. I said no such thing. But Sam was already chattering about names and breeds and training methods, and Clara caught Jack's eye across the table. He was fighting back a smile. You've created a monster, he murmured. I've created nothing. You're the one who mentioned riding lessons. And you're the one who said we'll see to a dog. I said we'll see to ending the conversation. There's a difference. Not to a 6-year-old. Tommy appeared in the doorway, Lily in tow. What's Sam yelling about now? We're getting a dog. We're not getting a dog. Mama said we'll see, and that always means yes. Tommy looked at Clara. Does it? No, it means we'll see. Okay, but historically speaking, whose side are you on? Tommy grinned, actually grinned, and took his seat at the table. Historically speaking, we'll see has resulted in 3 goldfish, a rabbit, and Sam's brief but memorable career as owner of a pet frog. The frog escaped. That doesn't count. It escaped because Sam left the lid off. That absolutely counts. Clara put her head in her hands. It's too early for this conversation. Jack set a cup of coffee in front of her. Drink. I'll handle the children. How? By promising Sam that if he survives his riding lesson without injuring himself or the horse, we'll discuss the dog situation tonight. That's bribery. That's parenting. Jack's eyes twinkled. You'll learn. Clara watched him herd the children through breakfast with surprising efficiency. He knew exactly when to be firm, when Sam tried to negotiate for 2 dogs instead of 1, when to be gentle when Lily got upset about a piece of toast that was too brown, and when to step back when Tommy wanted to handle something himself. He was good at this. Natural. Like he'd been waiting his whole life for a family to care for. Maybe he had been. The riding lesson started well. Jack had chosen a gentle mare named Sugar for Sam's first attempt. The horse was patient, docile, and apparently immune to the endless stream of questions Sam directed at her. Does she understand English? What's her favorite food? Has she ever kicked anyone? Can horses swim? Do they sleep standing up? Why are her eyes on the sides of her head? Jack answered each question with remarkable patience while helping Sam settle into the saddle. Clara watched from the porch, Lily beside her, Tommy leaning against the railing. He's going to fall off, Tommy predicted. Don't say that. I'm not being mean. I'm being realistic. Sam falls off of everything. Chairs, rocks his own feet. Tommy. I'm just saying we should have a plan for when it happens. Clara wanted to argue but couldn't. Sam's coordination was not his strongest trait. For the first 10 minutes, everything went smoothly. Sam sat straight in the saddle following Jack's instructions about where to put his feet and how to hold the reins. Sugar plodded around the corral in slow, steady circles. Then Sam spotted a rabbit. Look, a bunny. Sugar, look, there's a bunny over there. What happened next occurred too fast for Clara to process. Sam leaned sideways, pointing excitedly. Sugar, startled by the sudden movement, sidestepped. Sam overcorrected, lost his balance, and went tumbling off the horse into a snowdrift. Sam? Clara was off the porch and running before she even registered moving. But Jack got there first, pulling Sam out of the snow and checking him for injuries. I'm okay. Sam was laughing, not crying. That was amazing. The ground came up so fast. Can I do it again? No, Jack and Clara said simultaneously. But it was fun. Falling off horses is not fun, Jack said firmly. It's dangerous. You could have been seriously hurt. But I wasn't. That was luck. Next time you might not be so lucky. Jack set Sam on his feet and brushed snow from his coat. What did I tell you about staying centered in the saddle? Don't lean, don't lean. Even if you see a bunny, a bear, or the second coming of Christ. You stay centered and you keep control. What's the second coming of Christ? Ask your mother. Clara shot Jack a look that promised retribution later. Sam, sweetheart, are you sure you're not hurt? Your arm? Your head? I'm fine, Mama, really. Sam looked up at her with those earnest brown eyes. I want to try again. I promise I'll do better. Clara looked at Jack. He shrugged slightly, leaving the decision to her. One more try, she said finally. But if you fall again, we're done for the day. I won't fall. I'll be so centered, you won't even believe it. Sam scrambled back toward Sugar, who had watched the entire incident with an expression of equine resignation. Jack helped him back into the saddle, and this time Sam stayed perfectly still. Good, Jack said. Now we're going to walk around the corral again. Slowly. No sudden movements. No pointing at wildlife. Just you, the horse, and the path. What if I see another bunny? You ignore it. What if the bunny is really cute? You ignore it harder. Sam giggled, but did as he was told. By the end of the lesson, he was trotting in circles with something approaching competence, his face alight with pride. Did you see me, Mama? I didn't fall once. Well, after the first time. But the first time doesn't count because I didn't know about the leaning thing yet. I saw you. You did wonderfully. Jack says if I keep practicing, I'll be able to ride by myself soon. Can I practice every day? Please. We'll see. That means yes. It means we'll see. But Sam was already running toward the house, eager to tell Tommy and Lily about his triumph. Clara watched him go, then turned to Jack. Thank you. For what? He fell off the horse. For being patient with him. For not giving up after the fall. For... Clara searched for the right words. For making him feel capable. He is capable. He just needs guidance. Jack fell into step beside her as they walked back to the house. And someone to remind him that bunnies aren't worth broken bones. Clara laughed. You're going to have your hands full with that one. I know. I'm looking forward to it. They walked in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Jack said, One more day. One more day. Nervous? Terrified. Clara glanced at him. You? More than I've ever been about anything. Jack's hand found hers. But also more certain. Does that make sense? It makes perfect sense. They reached the porch, but instead of going inside, Jack stopped. His expression had turned serious. Clara, there's something I need to tell you. Before tomorrow. Her stomach tightened. What is it? Those men, Webb and his partner, they came back while I was in town yesterday. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. What? They didn't do anything. Just watched the house from the ridge. But they're still here, still waiting. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want to worry you, but you deserve to know the truth. Jack's grip on her hand tightened. After the wedding, I'm going to deal with this, one way or another. What do you mean, deal with it? I mean, I'm going to find out exactly what Harold Mercer wants and make it clear that he's not going to get it. Not from you, not from the children, not from anyone. Jack, those men are dangerous. You saw them. I've handled dangerous men before. Jack's voice was calm but hard. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, and neither are you. We end this. Soon. Clara wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him it was too risky, that they should just wait and hope Harold lost interest. But she knew Jack was right. Running hadn't worked. Hiding hadn't worked. The only option left was to stand and fight. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise. Promise me you won't do anything stupid. I'll try. Jack. He silenced her with a kiss. Gentle at first, then deeper, more urgent. When they finally broke apart, Clara was breathless. I'm going to protect this family, Jack said quietly. Whatever it takes. That's not negotiable. I know. Clara touched his face. Just make sure protecting us doesn't mean losing you. The children need you. I need you. You have me. Forever. Jack's eyes held hers. Starting tomorrow. That night, after the children were asleep, Clara sat by the window in her room and tried to process everything that had happened. In less than a month, her entire life had transformed. She'd gone from a desperate woman fleeing her past to a woman with a home, a family, and a future. It still didn't feel real. Tomorrow, she would marry Jackson Thornton. She would take his name, share his life, and bind herself to him in front of God and the law. And somewhere out there, men were waiting. Men who wanted to destroy everything she'd built. Clara closed her eyes and prayed something she hadn't done in years. Please, she whispered silently. Please let this be real. Please let it last. Please don't let me lose them. She fell asleep still praying, and dreamed of white dresses and gold rings, and a man with gray eyes who promised to keep her safe. Tomorrow. Everything would change tomorrow. The morning of the wedding arrived wrapped in silence. Clara woke before dawn, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Today. Today she would become Clara Thornton. Today her children would have a father. Today everything she'd been afraid to hope for would become real, or everything would fall apart. She dressed carefully in the blue dress she'd altered for the occasion, the same dress she'd been wearing when she collapsed in the snow, now cleaned and mended, and transformed into something almost beautiful. Lily had insisted on weaving dried flowers into her hair, and Clara had let her, even though the result was more wild than elegant. You look like a princess, Lily announced when she was finished. I look like a woman who let a 4-year-old do her hair. Same thing. Clara laughed despite her nerves. Where are your brothers? Tommy's helping Jack with his tie. Sam's eating his third breakfast. Third. He says weddings make him hungry. Clara found the boys in the parlor where the furniture had been pushed against the walls to make room for the ceremony. Tommy was indeed attempting to help Jack with his tie, though neither of them seemed to know what they were doing. It goes over then, under then, through the loop, Tommy insisted. That's what I did. No, you went under then, over then, through a different loop. There's only one loop. There are clearly 2 loops. Look. Clara stepped forward. Let me. Jack turned to face her, and his breath caught. For a moment he just stared. You're beautiful, he said quietly. Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. It's just the dress. It's not the dress. She reached up and began fixing his tie, her fingers trembling slightly. Jack stood perfectly still, watching her with an intensity that made her heart race. "Nervous?" she asked. "Terrified." "Good. Me too." "Mama." Sam appeared in the doorway, his face smeared with jam. "Reverend Price is here. He's tying up his horse. Should I tell him to come in?" "Yes, but wash your face first. You look like you attacked a jar of preserves." "I did attack a jar of preserves. It was delicious." Sam disappeared. Clara finished Jack's tie and stepped back to survey her work. "There. You look almost respectable." "Almost. Let's not get carried away." Jack caught her hand before she could move away. "Clara." "Yes. Thank you. For fixing your tie. For saying yes. For giving me a chance. For—" His voice roughened. "For letting me be part of your family." Clara squeezed his hand. "You're not just part of my family, Jack. You are my family, starting today." Reverend Price entered with the quiet dignity of a man who'd performed this ritual hundreds of times. He shook Jack's hand, complimented Clara on her dress, and produced a worn Bible from his coat. "Shall we begin?" The children arranged themselves in a semicircle, Tommy standing straight and serious, Sam fidgeting despite his best efforts, Lily clutching her favorite doll and watching with wide eyes. "Dearly beloved," Reverend Price began, "we are gathered here today to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." Clara barely heard the words. She was too focused on Jack's face, on the way he looked at her, like she was the only person in the room, the only person in the world. His gray eyes held none of the hardness she'd seen that first day. They were soft now, vulnerable, full of a love he'd spent 4 years trying to bury. "Do you, Jackson Thornton, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until death do you part?" Jack's voice was steady. "I do." "And do you, Clara Mercer, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until death do you part?" Clara looked at her children. At Tommy, who'd given his blessing, despite every reason to be suspicious. At Sam, who'd embraced Jack with the wholehearted enthusiasm he brought to everything. At Lily, who'd known from the beginning that this man was meant to be their papa. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me by the state of Texas, and in the presence of God, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Reverend Price smiled. "You may kiss your bride." Jack pulled her close and kissed her gently, reverently, like she was something precious. Clara heard Sam make a gagging noise, heard Lily giggle, heard Tommy's quiet snort of laughter. When they finally broke apart, Jack pressed his forehead against hers. "Hello, Mrs. Thornton." "Hello, Mr. Thornton." "Ew," Sam announced. "Can we eat cake now?" The celebration was small, but perfect. Clara had baked a simple cake the day before, and Jack had produced a bottle of wine he'd been saving for years. The children drank apple cider and stuffed themselves with sweets, while the adults sat by the fire closer than they'd ever allowed themselves to be before. "I have something for you," Jack said quietly once the children had exhausted themselves and retreated upstairs to play. The ring was enough. "This isn't from me." He reached into his pocket and produced an envelope. "It's from Sarah." Clara frowned. "Your sister?" "I found it last night going through some old papers. She wrote it years ago before she got married, before everything went wrong." Jack's voice was rough. "She wanted me to give it to my wife someday. She said—" He stopped, cleared his throat. "She said she knew I'd find someone eventually, even if I didn't believe it myself." Clara took the envelope with trembling hands. The paper was yellowed with age. The handwriting faded but still legible. "Dear sister-in-law." The letter began. "If you're reading this, it means my stubborn brother finally opened his heart to someone. I always knew he would, even when he swore he'd die alone. Jack pretends to be hard, but underneath all that gruffness is the kindest soul I've ever known. He'll frustrate you sometimes. He'll forget to say the words you need to hear. He'll retreat into himself when he should be reaching for you. But he will love you with everything he has. He will protect you and cherish you and put your happiness above his own. He will be the husband I always prayed he'd become. Welcome to our family. Take care of my brother. He needs someone to take care of and someone to take care of him. With love. Sarah Thornton. Clara's vision blurred with tears. She looked up at Jack, who was watching her with an expression of raw vulnerability. She knew, Clara whispered. Even then she knew. Sarah always saw things other people missed. She saw the good in everyone, even people who didn't deserve it. Jack's jaw tightened. I failed her. I wasn't there when she needed me. But I won't fail you. I won't fail our children. I promise you that. Clara set the letter aside and took his hands in hers. You didn't fail Sarah. You loved her, and she knew that. Sometimes love isn't enough to save people from the choices they make. Clara's voice was fierce. But you saved us, Jack. You saved me and Tommy and Sam and Lily. We were dying in that snow and you stopped. You had every reason to keep going and you stopped. I couldn't leave you. I know. That's who you are. That's who Sarah knew you were. Clara squeezed his hands. She'd be proud of you. I'm proud of you. Jack pulled her into his arms and held her tight. Clara felt his shoulders shake, felt the wetness on her neck where his face was pressed. He was crying. This man who'd built walls for 4 years, who'd convinced himself he didn't deserve love or family or happiness. He was crying in her arms because someone finally saw him for who he really was. Clara held him and let him grieve. For Sarah. For the years he'd lost. For the person he'd been before pain turned him hard and lonely. And when the tears finally stopped, when Jack lifted his head and looked at her with red-rimmed eyes, Clara kissed him. No more walls, she whispered against his lips. No more walls. He agreed. The trouble came at dusk. Clara was in the kitchen cleaning up from the celebration when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Fast. Too fast for a casual visitor. Jack. He was already moving, grabbing his rifle from beside the door. Take the children upstairs. Lock the door. Don't come out until I tell you. Jack. Go. Now. Clara ran. She gathered the children from the parlor, ignoring their confused questions, and herded them up the stairs. Tommy understood immediately. His face went pale, but he helped her corral Sam and Lily into the master bedroom. Stay here, Clara instructed. Don't make a sound. Mama, what's happening? Lily's voice trembled. Nothing, sweetheart. Everything's going to be fine. Those men are back, aren't they? Tommy's voice was flat. The ones who came before. Clara couldn't lie to him. I think so. But Jack will handle it. What if he can't? He will. Clara gripped her son's shoulders. Tommy, listen to me. No matter what happens, you stay here with your brother and sister. You protect them. Can you do that? Yes. Good boy. Clara closed the door behind her and crept to the top of the stairs. Through the front window, she could see 3 riders in the yard. Webb and his partner from before, plus a third man she didn't recognize, and Jack standing on the porch with his rifle raised. That's close enough. Webb held up his hands in a mockery of surrender. Easy, Thornton. We're not here for trouble. Then turn around and leave. Can't do that. We've got a job to finish. Webb's smile was cold. Harold Mercer is getting impatient. He wants those papers signed, and he wants the woman brought back to Philadelphia. The woman is my wife now. She's not going anywhere. Your wife? Webb laughed. Well, that complicates things. But not as much as you might think. See, Harold's got lawyers. Good ones. They can make that marriage disappear if they need to. They can try. They will try. And while they're trying, things might get uncomfortable around here. Accidents happen on ranches, fires, injuries, children wandering off and never coming back. Clara felt ice form in her stomach. He was threatening the children. This monster was standing in their yard threatening her babies. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run down there and claw his eyes out. But she forced herself to stay still, to trust Jack to believe that he could handle this. "Let me be real clear about something," Jack said, his voice dropping to something low and dangerous. "If anything happens to my wife or my children, anything at all, I will hunt down everyone responsible. I will take my time, and when I'm done, there won't be enough left to bury." Big words from one man against three. I've faced worse odds. Jack's finger moved to the trigger. "You've got 10 seconds to get off my land." Thornton. 9. "This isn't over." 8. Webb held up his hands again. "Fine, we're leaving. But you haven't heard the last of this." 7. The three men wheeled their horses and rode away. Jack watched until they disappeared over the ridge, then lowered his rifle. Clara was down the stairs and out the door before she even realized she was moving. "Jack?" He caught her in his arms. "I told you to stay inside." "I couldn't. I heard everything. They threatened the children, Jack. They threatened our children." "I know." His arms tightened around her. "I'm going to fix this." "How?" "I'm going to Philadelphia." Clara pulled back to stare at him. "What?" "Harold Mercer thinks he can hide behind hired men and lawyers. He's wrong. I'm going to look him in the eye and explain exactly what will happen if he doesn't leave my family alone." "Jack, you can't." "I can. I have to." Jack cupped her face in his hands. "Clara, as long as Harold thinks he has a chance of getting what he wants, he'll keep sending men. He'll keep threatening us. The only way to end this is to make him understand that there's no winning. Not against us." "What if he doesn't listen?" "Then I'll make him listen." Clara saw something in Jack's eyes, something cold and hard that reminded her he'd nearly beaten a man to death once. That he'd survived the frontier alone for 4 years. That beneath the gentle husband and loving father was a man capable of violence when his family was threatened. "Promise me you'll come back," she whispered. "I promise. Promise me you won't do anything that will get you killed or arrested." Jack hesitated. "Jack, I promise I'll do whatever is necessary to protect this family. Nothing more, nothing less." It wasn't the assurance she wanted, but it was the only one he could give. "When do you leave?" "Tomorrow morning. The sooner this is done, the better." Clara nodded slowly. "Then we have tonight." "We have tonight." They went inside, collected the children from their hiding place, and gathered in the parlor. Jack explained in gentler terms that he needed to take a trip, that he'd be gone for a few weeks, that everything was going to be fine. "Why do you have to go?" Sam asked. "To make sure the bad men don't come back." "Can't you just shoot them?" "Sam," Clara admonished. "It's a fair question." Jack ruffled the boy's hair. "Shooting people is a last resort. First we try talking." "What if talking doesn't work?" "Then we talk louder." Tommy hadn't said anything. He sat in the corner, his face pale, his hands clenched in his lap. "Tommy." Jack walked over and crouched in front of him. "You okay?" "You're leaving. Just for a while. What if you don't come back?" Jack put his hands on the boy's shoulders. "Tommy, look at me." Tommy looked. "I am coming back. I don't care what I have to do or who I have to go through. I am coming back to this family, to you and your brother and your sister and your mother. Do you believe me?" Tommy was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Yes." "Good. Because I need you to be strong while I'm gone. Help your mother. Watch out for your siblings. Be the man I know you can be." "I will." "That's my boy." Jack pulled Tommy into a hug, awkward and brief but real. "I'm proud of you. Remember that." That night, after the children were finally asleep, Jack and Clara sat on the porch one last time. I hate this, Clara said quietly. I know. I finally have everything I've ever wanted, and now you have to leave to protect it. I'm not leaving forever, just long enough to make sure we can keep what we have. What if Harold won't listen? What if he... Then I'll deal with it. Jack took her hand. Clara, I've spent 4 years running from my past, from Sarah's death, from my guilt, from the man I became afterward. But I'm done running. I have something to fight for now, someone to come home to. 3 someones. 4 someones. Don't forget yourself. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. Come back to me, Jack Thornton. Always. They sat together until the stars faded, and the first light of dawn crept over the horizon. Then Jack kissed her long and deep, and full of promises, and rode away. Clara watched until he disappeared. Then she went inside to wake the children and face the first day of the rest of her life. The weeks without Jack were the longest of Clara's life. She kept busy. There was always work to be done on a ranch, even in winter. She managed the animals, maintained the house, cared for the children. At night, she lay in the bed she'd shared with Jack for one brief night and tried not to imagine all the things that could go wrong. Tommy stepped up in ways she hadn't expected. He took over Jack's morning chores without being asked, checking on the horses and making sure the cattle had feed. He helped Sam with his reading lessons and entertained Lily with stories when she got restless. He'd be proud of you, Clara told him one evening. I'm just doing what he asked. You're doing more than that. You're being a leader. Tommy flushed but didn't deny it. Clara saw something change in him during those weeks, a confidence that hadn't been there before. He was still serious, still cautious, but there was a steadiness now that came from knowing he was capable of handling responsibility. Sam struggled more. He missed Jack fiercely, missed their riding lessons, their conversations, the easy camaraderie they'd developed. He moped around the house, picked fights with his brother, and asked every single day when Jack was coming home. Soon, Clara told him. He'll be home soon. You keep saying that. Because it's true. What if it's not? What if he decided to stay away? What if he doesn't want us anymore? Clara pulled her son into her arms. Sam, listen to me. Jack loves us, all of us. He didn't leave because he wanted to. He left because he had to. And he's coming back. Promise. I promise. It was a promise she prayed she could keep. Lily was the calmest of all. She went about her days with her usual cheerful determination, helping Clara with small tasks and chattering constantly about what she and Mr. Papa would do when he returned. He promised to teach me to ride Sugar, she announced one morning. And he said I could name the baby chicks. And he said we could get a dog if I was very, very good. He said we'd discuss getting a dog, Clara corrected. That means yes. It does not mean yes. Sam says, we'll see, always means yes, and we'll discuss is the same thing. Clara made a mental note to have a conversation with Sam about managing his sister's expectations. 3 weeks after Jack left, a letter arrived. Clara's hands shook as she opened it. My dear Clara, it began. I've met with Harold Mercer. He's exactly the kind of man I expected, small, mean, and convinced that money and lawyers can solve every problem. I explained to him in terms he understood that his pursuit of you and the children needed to end. He was resistant at first. I was persuasive. The details aren't important, but I want you to know that I kept my promise. I did nothing that will get me killed or arrested. I did, however, make it very clear that the cost of continuing his harassment would be much higher than any inheritance he might gain. Harold is a businessman. He understands cost-benefit analysis. After our conversation, he agreed to sign papers releasing any claim to the Children's Trust Fund and dropping all efforts to locate or contact you. His lawyers are drawing up the documents now. I should be home within the week. I miss you. I miss the children. I miss our home. Tell Tommy I'm proud of him. Tell Sam I found a puppy in town that needs a family. Tell Lily that Mr. Papa is counting the days until he can see her again. And tell yourself that I love you. More than I knew it was possible to love anyone. Forever yours. Jack. Clara read the letter 3 times. Then she gathered the children and read it aloud. A puppy. Sam's face lit up. He found us a puppy. That appears to be what the letter says. I knew we'll discuss meant yes, I knew it. Tommy was quieter, but Clara could see the relief in his eyes. It's really over. Harold's going to leave us alone. That's what Jack says. And you believe him? Clara looked at the letter in her hands, at the cramped handwriting that was becoming familiar, at the words that promised safety and love and a future she'd almost stopped believing in. Yes, she said. I believe him. Jack came home on a Tuesday. Clara was in the kitchen when she heard hoofbeats. She ran to the window and saw him dusty, exhausted, more beautiful than anything she'd ever seen. Jack. She was out the door and in his arms before he'd even fully dismounted. He caught her staggering slightly and buried his face in her hair. I'm home. You're home. The children came running. Sam launched himself at Jack's legs. Lily demanded to be picked up. Tommy hung back for a moment, then stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Jack's waist. Welcome back, Tommy said quietly. Sir. Dad, Jack corrected. Or Pa, or Papa. Whatever feels right. But not sir. I'm your father now. That means you get to call me something more familiar than sir. Tommy's eyes widened. Then slowly, a smile spread across his face. Okay, Dad. That's better. Jack ruffled his hair. Now who wants to meet the puppy? Sam's shriek of excitement could probably be heard 3 counties over. The puppy was a golden ball of fluff named Biscuit, Sam's choice in honor of the calf he'd been promised he could name. Within hours, Biscuit had claimed a spot by the fire and the hearts of everyone in the household. He's perfect, Lily declared, letting the puppy lick her face. Mr. Papa, he's the most perfect puppy in the whole world. I thought so too. Clara watched her family from the doorway of the parlor, her husband playing with their dog on the floor, her children laughing and wrestling and completely at ease. The home they'd built together filled with warmth and love and the sound of happiness. What are you thinking? Jack asked, looking up at her. I'm thinking about how much has changed. A few months ago, I was dying in the snow with 3 children and no hope. Now, she gestured at the scene before her. Now I have everything. Jack stood and crossed to her, taking her hands in his. You have more than everything. You have a family that loves you, a home that's yours, a future that no one can take away. He kissed her forehead. And you have me. For whatever that's worth. It's worth everything. Clara leaned into him. You're worth everything. That night, after the children were asleep and the house had fallen quiet, Jack and Clara sat on the porch one more time. The stars blazed overhead, bright and eternal witnesses to everything that had happened and everything still to come. Do you remember what you said to me? Clara asked. That first day when you found us in the snow. I said a lot of things. You said you had room for 4. Jack nodded slowly. I remember. Did you know then what you were starting? No, I just knew I couldn't leave you. Couldn't watch those children freeze while I rode away to my empty house and my empty life. Jack was quiet for a moment. I thought I was saving you. Turns out you were saving me. Clara reached over and took his hand. I think we saved each other. Maybe that's how it's supposed to work. Maybe none of us can do it alone. Maybe not. Clara squeezed his fingers. But we're not alone anymore. Not ever again. Jack turned to look at her. In his gray eyes, she saw everything, the pain of his past, the love of his present, the hope of his future. I love you, Clara Thornton. I love you too, Jack Thornton. And there on the porch of the home they'd built together, surrounded by the family they'd created, Clara finally let herself believe. This was real. This was permanent. This was forever. Inside the house, Biscuit barked at something in his dreams. Upstairs, Sam mumbled about horses. In the room next door, Tommy slept peacefully for the first time in years, no longer carrying the weight of the world on his young shoulders. And Lily, curled up with her favorite doll, dreamed of the papa who'd promised to keep her safe. Clara and Jack sat together until the stars began to fade, and the first light of dawn touched the horizon. Then they went inside, closed the door on the darkness, and stepped into the light of their new life. A cowboy who'd said he had room for 4. A woman who'd arrived with 3 children and no hope. And the family that grew from that single moment of grace. Some love stories begin with grand gestures and sweeping romance. This one began in the snow, with a desperate woman and a lonely man, and a simple offer that changed everything. I've got room for 4. 5 words that built a family. 5 words that healed 2 broken hearts. 5 words that proved love could find you in the most unexpected places if you were brave enough to let it in. Clara Thornton, once. Clara Mercer, once a woman with nothing. Closed her eyes and smiled. She was home. They were all home. And that was the only ending that mattered.